Good evening, everyone.
All right. Hi, Mia.
Oh, I was muted. Hey, Mr. Greenberg, how are you?
Good.
Good. Hey, Felice. Oh, she's still connecting to audio. Fred should be in momentarily.
Hey.
Okay.
I think there's Zoom meetings in every room in my apartment tonight.
Yeah. Zoom is definitely Zooming these days.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Mr. Guerrero. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening, everyone.
Everyone hear me? I feel like I'm on a dial-up computer today. Everything's just running slow.
I can hear you.
Right. I see we're still got a couple more members jumping in. We're just going to allow a couple of minutes for them, and then we're going to begin the meeting. Just maybe another 2 minutes. So. And meanwhile, just for attendance purposes, Ms. Robertson, I see you. Mr. Granum, I see you. Mr. Greenberg, I see you. Mr. Abraham, I see you as well. How you doing? And not for attendance purposes, but Mr. Magnus, I see you as well. Welcome. Okay, well, okay, I think we have 5 members, so we do have a quorum. Rather than wait too much longer, I want to be respectful of everyone's time, especially that I've already used some of ours just front line in. Okay, so Mia, are you able to take your recording? Can you record minutes?
Sure thing.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
All right, we are calling the meeting to order now. The time is now 7:08 p.m. I want to welcome everyone to the Transportation Committee meeting of Brooklyn Community Board 9 for April 2020. I currently serve as the Transportation Committee Chair. My name is Fred Baptiste for the record. I want to welcome all those members who are here and our guests as well. The agenda has been sent out prior to the meeting, so we should have it. There are a couple of points, and I apologize. I know you're trying to break the agenda out a little bit more. Just been one of those months, one of those lives this month. But there are a couple of items that we will go over when we get to the old business in terms of updates and some conversation in terms of some next steps that the committee and the board will probably be taking with some of the regards to some of the items that we currently have open. We're going to waive the reading of the rules of order. This is always a very good bunch, so we just remember we're respectful. Please just wait to be recognized. Right, and with that, that is all. So we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the approval of the March 23 committee meeting minutes. Those, I believe, have been sent out previously as well. Have the members of the committee had an opportunity to review? Okay, great. At this time, are there any corrections to be made to the minutes? Okay. Right, no objections. All right, is there any objection to adopting the minutes as written by common consent? Any objection? Okay. Hearing none, the minutes are adopted by common consent. All right, we're going to jump right into the meat and potatoes of the meeting, old business. So we have a number of items that are still currently up in the air. So I want to try and provide some updates in terms of some of the items that we have outstanding. At that point, I'll also open up the floor. So if the members have any questions with regards to any old business we have, we can discuss that as well as the next steps. Okay, so first I want to go back with respect to Flatbush Avenue. So that is something that we've been reaching out to some of the other boards as well. So there is some movement that are happening with some of the other neighboring boards. So we're trying to make it a coordinated effort with respect to that. I had hoped to have a little bit of discussion with regards to that, but I apologize since I didn't put that into the agenda. If members are comfortable talking about some next steps, or if there's anything that we wanted to do, or if you feel there's additional outreach or information we need, we can address that at this time and make sure we get that for the committee. Are there any questions or points that we want to talk about with respect to the Flatbush? Okay, all right. So from our I'm sorry. From our communications, there isn't a time frame set in terms of they're drafting anything or anything, to that effect yet. So we're still good. but I think we definitely want to make sure that we take this as an opportunity. So I think we had sent out some of the feedback, and perhaps we'll make sure that this is an agenda item for the May meeting in terms of we'll discuss the feedback that we've gotten back. Hopefully by the time, I think I'll also be able to get some feedback from some of our adjacent boards, and we can craft some kind of a resolution in terms of what we think are the priorities, what we would want to see in terms of priorities for that corridor as they're drafting that. And also, I think issue a call where it's like, you know what, it's not business as usual for DOT, where we'll draft the entire plan and it's really a matter to just come back to us to say, you know, dot an I across a T. We want to make sure that it's substantive and it's a continuous conversation. Does that make sense for the committee? All right. Next item I want to add, and actually let me make that the last one. We currently have a list outstanding with DOT in terms of items that they're supposed to be taking care of. Last month was an issue, and quite frankly, I take it as a matter of lack of respect for the committee and for the boards. And this is not something that is necessarily endemic to CB9, but I think in general, DOT has been noted as one of the lesser agencies in terms of responsiveness. Obviously, they claim it's like, it's timeframes, or it's like they don't have the manpower to do this, but I think that by the city charter, it's a mandated responsibility. And, not that they need to show up for every meeting, but when we ask them to come, they need to come. So the district manager has drafted a letter that I'm going to be signing and sending out to the borough commissioner, but as well to our local elected officials as well. And I'll make sure we CC the committee on this as well, where it's way past time that, they need to be responsive and they need to come back to this. And there also needs to be a rethink in terms of even the way they process these things. From the meeting I had with the district manager, they say that this is a ticket-oriented thing. So they put in the tickets get processed, but especially for some of those requests, they take some time to process. So when they come back with an answer, it may take a good period of time. I think from last month, I believe we had sent out the links for the design manual, and I get it. To that extent, I get it. It's not something that for a lot of these things they can necessarily turn around quickly, but there needs to be a better process for doing that. And especially in terms of, we can't go onesie twosie where we send in a ticket and they say no, and then we turn in another ticket and it becomes a 4 or 5 year process. But that is part of the content that is also going to be included as part of that letter to DOT in terms of trying to see if we can get them to come probably for next month. And hopefully with a strongly worded letter and along with some support from our elected officials, hopefully we can make sure they come here and they're able to address the committee correctly without further delays. Any questions with regards to that? Yes, Papa.
I feel like that's the same update as last month and the month before. So, I
I was in the impression that we
wasting
would
our
have
time here. Like,
with us
I
today.
don't, like a lot of this is on DOT for sure, but it's on us. Like, what are we doing here? Like, we're just saying we're
we
going
have
to write
DOT
a strongly worded
in the
letter.
last year.
but-
I appreciate and understand the frustration with that. And this one in particular, I'll take on me in terms of this is something that I have directed the district manager to take care of or to initiate that. So the bog down is on me in this one in terms of making sure it goes out the door. But that is the commitment that it is going out the door this month, and that the expectation is the borough commissioner is here in front of this committee, ready to address the questions that we have.
I hear you and I appreciate it. And I know there's so much going on, but like respectfully, that was the exact same thing said last month, that it was on your plate. That like, I literally watched the meeting last night from last month where Dante, and I know he's working his ass off, but like, he was like, I don't want them to lie. They're going to come. They've been saying it and you echoed it. And like, I want to be able to take you at your word, but like, it just feels like we are wasting all of our time saying the same things to nobody, that like every day people are being injured. This is on us as a committee, that we're for months now. We've been saying since September or even earlier that DOT would come just have a conversation. Every injury is on us. And it's like, it makes me not want to be a part of this at all, because, this is just a very ineffective committee. and or bored too. And like, I know there are many reasons for it, but like, I don't know. I'm at a loss as to, I want to throw a lot of the blame, of course, at DOT, but I mean, we have to be able to like have an honest conversation with ourselves, and like, you know, there's just things are not being done other than people are being hurt. Not saying we can solve everything, but like, it does not feel like we are trying.
I totally agree. I mean, look at my situation here in Washington and Montgomery. You know, I showed 2 pictures of accidents. One went into the building, one went into the corner store. A person got killed here as well. Okay, and they do nothing. I totally agree with what he's saying. Parker, I agree with you.
Yeah, it's very frustrating.
No, absolutely, and those I take, and we'll, you know, and the commitment I'm making this evening is that we're going to make sure that this is happening. It's going to go out. You'll be able to call me on the progress of this. So within the next 2 days, you will see this letter go out, and we are looking for an immediate response. Something very quick. With that, I take this. I have to put that portion of it. I take on my shoulders, and I take the responsibility.
Fred, I have
Yes.
another issue to raise with them. I can leave it to later in the meeting, or I can talk about it now, whatever you like.
Sure, absolutely. So if you'd like to do that now, we can do that now. Actually,
Okay,
is this an
so
old business? Is this something we've talked about? Well, is this something we talked
I
about
don't
before?
think we've
or-
talked about it before, but you'll
So
tell me
let's
if
do
I'm
this,
wrong.
just so we can go through the old business first. Put
Yeah,
a pin
sure.
on that one if you
Okay.
could. When we get to the new business, I have one item for the new business in terms of the town hall, and we can
Perfect.
add that too in terms of next steps. And we can
Okay,
discuss that.
great.
All right. Okay. And actually, this is probably more appropriate as a new business. I think that's for the most part that with that. So, you know, let's go to new business and let's take your item, and then I think there's a couple of items too that we want to do in terms of actions that we want to take for next month.
Okay,
Go ahead, Stan, I'm sorry.
sorry. And this might be something we want to do jointly with the Parks Committee. I'm not sure. You can advise about how this should work, but every Sunday when Smorgasburg is here, Ocean Avenue and Lincoln Road become absolute chaos. There are 5 cars in the bus stop. There's an ice cream truck where it shouldn't be. The hydrants are filled. The crosswalks are filled. Nobody can cross safely. There are double parkers and triple parkers. There are no trash cans, so it may be sanitation also. And basically, you know, when there's a marathon or a half marathon, the people who organize that come to us and they give us our plan, and we go through it and we say, this is good and this is not good. And maybe they listen to us and maybe they don't, but at least they come to us. I don't believe that the Prospect Park Alliance has ever come to us about Smorgasburg, and it's wreaking havoc on the neighborhood, and that's mostly transportation and partly sanitation. And I think we need to have them come talk to us, and we need to tell them what needs to get fixed. And maybe DOT can help with this, but I think that's not going to happen until we talk to the Alliance first. But whatever you advise.
Can I
Sure, go
jump
ahead,
in
Jefferson.
here?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure.
So Stanley, I'm not 100% sure if you're referencing last weekend and I believe the weekend before.
It's
But,
every weekend that there's Smorgasburg. So
No,
every
it's-
Sunday from now till like September, October.
From what I have observed, Smorgasburg is not wholly responsible for what you're seeing. Over the last couple of weekends, there has been a suspension of Q line service.
That
And
too.
whenever that's the case, there is an exponentially high number of additional buses that are required to substitute for the suspension in subway service. So what you're
That
seeing,
definitely adds to the fun. You're right.
right? So to single out Smorgasburg, I don't think that the Parks Department is going to take that weight, right? Because I don't think that Smorgasburg is responsible for even 50% of what you see. When that subway line is out, 90% of the congestion you see, and it's not just on Lincoln, it's all the way back to Grand Army Plaza, because it takes 10 buses to replace one subway train,
Sure.
right? Train hosts 1,000
so-
people.
I
So
live right
it's-
on Ocean, so I see it every Sunday, and all it does is make me want to not be here on Sunday. And
Well-
you're right, the buses make it worse, but it is in large part Smorgasburg, because when the Q train is running fine, it's still chaotic. And I can't tell you how many times I've asked through 311 and even talking to police precinct to ticket the cars that are parked in the bus stop. This is not even where the Q train buses stop. And it is the Alliance's fault, because they get paid to bring in Smorgasburg. Smorgasburg pays the Alliance uses the money to help run the park. If they're going to take in that money, then they have to consider what happens in the neighborhood also. They can't just crap on us. I guarantee you that this wouldn't be happening in Park Slope.
Jeff's point, no, I think to Jeff's point, and this definitely, I think that when we have especially large events that happen like that with regularity in the park, I don't want to necessarily blame it all on Smorgasburg, but I think you're right. It is a part of the planning conversation that absolutely should happen.
Right. There was never a discussion.
Right. And it's because I think that Smorgasburg, they look at it. I know that the board touches Smorgasburg from the sense of public safety, where it comes in, with public safety, where it's alcohol licenses, liquor licenses.
Mhm.
So they
Right.
get that. So that's one of the touch points for the board. This is one I think that we'll probably need to have some additional conversations. It's partly transportation, partly public safety. So we may need to actually have a conversation with NYPD on that one as well. And maybe DOT, and maybe a transportation conversation as well.
Right.
Because all those things, they just, it's a perfect storm on Ocean Avenue going all the way up Flatbush going up.
Right.
So
I
there needs
just
to
wanna
be
get this
something in terms
started.
of, they probably need more police presence there. They need, people to, flaggers as they keep it moving.
And they
to
need more
make sure they're
trash
ticketing
cans.
the cars.
I mean, our planters are getting filled
And
with trash.
sanitation.
So,
No, so
yeah.
okay. So trash cans. We're talking about traffic.
I mean, they should, in my view, they should be hiring some of the Sam Schwartz people or something like that to direct the crossing on Ocean and Lincoln.
Here's the thing,
And-
I'm not sure if usually vendors are responsible for that. Usually that becomes a matter, if the city approves the event, then the city kind of takes that, and that's a cost they tag on, I guess.
Right, either way.
But it's worth the
And-
conversation, but it's a conversation.
Right, and I don't understand why there isn't more enforcement of the curb space when there are so many more buses. Like, MTA has a tough job there. They should make it a little bit easier on themselves and say, no cars here. I don't understand why they don't do that.
Because that adds more dynamite, I guess, to, it's another add to the mix in terms of, do they try and get the
Well,
bus?
I'll
Well,
tell
you know
you,
what?
half of the cars that are parked there have fake placards anyway, so,
Right. Okay. So you know what? So it's the conversation that needs to be had at the very least. So I think we need to get and Mia, if you can make a note of this as well. So we need to speak to DOT. We need to speak to DAS sanitation, and NYPD
I can
on
send
this
you
one.
some pictures if you like to.
Mia, is that helpful?
Up to you.
Yeah, definitely, Mr. Greenberg, if you can shoot them over to the BK09 email, that'd be great.
Will
And
do.
the
Thank you.
timing of the conversation is good too, because the district manager actually has his district service cabinet meeting scheduled for next week.
Okay.
So
I'll try to get to it
that'll
by
be an
Friday.
opportunity for him to address it, because he should have representation for those agencies at that time.
Great,
So we can talk about if they need to coordinate this better.
okay, thank you.
Okay, no, but thank you for that.
It
All right.
also kind of dovetails very well with what we've loosely talked about, but just Lincoln Road between Smorgasburg or not, but Lincoln Road between Ocean and Flatbush.
Right,
DOT perspective, probably more than other agencies, but it needs a rethink for sure.
right. Yeah, that's
Right, but
good.
one-
Or
to
it
know.
exacerbates it, but
Right.
it's a
The
problem.
one conversation that is happening with regards to Lincoln, and there's probably gonna be more conversations that need to be had, is that I think they are contemplating a loading zone for some of the commercial traffic during certain portions of
Yeah,
the day.
because of the big market.
Which probably makes sense where it's like, it's already big enough with the buses there, but then if you're gonna throw trucks loading and offloading and everything like that, that probably really makes it, kind of
Right.
crazy. So
Right.
just as the heads up, so I think they're contemplating, so there may be some spots they may shift where there may be loading zones, we may lose some parking for some portion of the day. But that's at least an initial conversation they've sent to the board. Dante is in conversation with DOT, so we're trying to see where that goes. And to the extent where it's like, I think they were looking at, it might be a total of 8 spots. What might end up happening from what I'm understanding preliminarily is towards the east end of Lincoln. I think right now there's some parking, rather than confuse it. On one end of it, there's some parking that is there. What they're looking at doing is moving that parking where it's either going to be a loading zone, and then if it's not during business hours, it might be parking that comes back to the community where it's restored. But there's going to be some motion with that. But that begs the conversation we should have with them in terms of what is the vision, and we'll
Right.
discuss this a little bit. What is the vision
I
for
will tell you
for
that
Lincoln?
there's probably almost no one who can drive to Lincoln Road to shop there, because those parking spots are always taken by vehicles that have vests in their windows, and they just sit there all day. So that they are not useful to anyone in the neighborhood.
So making it a loading zone actually will not do anything.
If they keep parking
For the-
there, right?
Right. I mean, but listen, after hours, if that's after hours parking, that's fine. I mean, listen, if it's after 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, at least there's some level of parking that can be had there. Perhaps it's a benefit that we can use there as well. But we'll provide additional updates, so that'll be forwarded to the committee as we get additional.
All right.
And with respect to loading zones, so I think those are the two loading zones that we discussed, and those are proposed. Lincoln, and I believe there is another loading zone they're looking at closer to Medgar Evers College on Nostrand. So no, by Nostrand. So I think that the two from the brief conversation I had with the district manager, these are ones that kind of make sense between the Lincoln Road one in terms of that, because I think they're at the supermarket there. And there's another one they're talking about on Nostrand. I'll get the details for that. But definitely, we want to make sure that the conversation is, when they're doing anything like that, that those are conversations that should be brought to the transportation committee first, because of the impacts that they have, the sensitivity in the district. Okay. All right. So the loading zones, Brooklyn Bus Network redesign. So we've had some initial conversations with respect to that. I think
You have a hand raised.
Oh,
There's
I'm
a hand
sorry,
raised on the previous topic.
Mr. Magnus. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So sorry about that. I actually had a question. Has DOT ever given a reason, or has historically explained why Lincoln Road is bi-directional instead of the rest of the street there?
I don't think we've had a background on that.
Okay. I again, like we're thinking about inches in terms of how many cars and buses can fit, when that is the only portion of the road that allows traffic to go in both directions. I think, from a planning perspective, it makes Flatbush Avenue really, let's say, challenging for drivers and harmful for pedestrians, because there's now 2 opposing greens going against each other at a multi-cycling light intersection. It's just annoying. I will also say that, like, some of the best bike infrastructure in our district, that 2.5-ish miles that goes from the east, from Utica all the way down to Flatbush, just stops right there. And it is extremely dangerous to have to zigzag across Flatbush and then try not to get hit by like 6 guys unloading a beer into Lincoln Market or whatever. I would also, so those are 2 comments that I would like DOT or somebody on this board, if they have the answer, to respond to. There's also I think there was a trial or a pilot for a loading zone further in on Lincoln, across from the single family kind of Lincoln or Lefferts Manor homes. It's got like a blue sign. It's for loading and unloading only. I don't think I've ever seen anyone use it though, because it doesn't seem to be in let's say, an opportune place that doesn't make sense with a commercial activity on the corner, because it's too far inward. I'm curious if or anyone knows the history behind that, if it's a pilot, what they're looking to get out of it. I don't know.
I don't have the information, and let me stress, if I missed anything, just let me know. I don't have information on that one. I want to say that part of the idea was moving that zone, because I think, to the point you're making, that it's not really used. They were looking to moving it towards Lincoln to make it actually useful. Much more than that, I couldn't speak to, but I can definitely make sure that's something that they can address. as well as we can ask them if they can provide some history with respect to Lincoln. Only thing I would suspect with Lincoln is that, because of the nature of Ocean Avenue and Flatbush Avenue, with all the buildings, it's like there's not a lot. It's like you're gonna go almost a half a mile. You probably go about half a mile to a mile before you can actually turn off of Lincoln, or turn off of either Ocean or Flatbush. So
But you're in a car. That's 10 seconds in a car. That's like half a mile is a big deal, or not even.
Well,
It's
on Flatbush,
probably
but
a
on
third
Flatbush
of
and
a
Ocean,
mile.
no, it's well, on Flatbush and Ocean, though. I mean, especially it's already slow enough traffic as it is. So I'm guessing.
Are you saying adding more lights makes the traffic go faster there?
I'm sorry, are we talking about Lincoln, or are we talking about
I'm talking about changing the flow of vehicle traffic at Lincoln to prohibit that kind of left turn around that cars will sometimes do illegally, but it's confusing because it's bidirectional for that little last part between Flatbush and Ocean.
Yeah.
I'm saying, like, from the experience of the driver, like a third of a mile, 0.25 miles is seconds, but that's from the experience of somebody who's a pedestrian or somebody taking the bus, like that is a long time. I'm trying to explain how it feels in terms of scale here. I'm not trying to inconvenience drivers or anything. I just don't think it makes sense for the greater purposes of what we're trying to do.
What is the left turn?
That was a little too heated for conversation.
What left turn are you referring to?
So out of Lincoln, heading east onto Flatbush.
So the left turn that one would make off of Ocean Avenue.
Yes.
If one was
continue.
headed, right. If a driver was headed towards Flatbush Avenue on Ocean.
Yes.
The left turn that they would make onto Lincoln is where they would go eastbound on Lincoln from Ocean to Flatbush. Is that the left turn you're talking about?
No, I think that is within the realm of that's within the flow of the rest of Lincoln. I'm talking about.
Oh, wait.
I'm talking about the other way. Yeah.
I'm sorry. That was the right turn that you would make heading east. So the left turn you're talking about is if a driver was headed south on Ocean Avenue and they make that left turn to head east on Lincoln, that left turn?
No, from Lincoln to Flatbush. That is the intersection that I take particular umbrage with.
Oh, okay. So from Lincoln, if they're headed east on Lincoln, when they
can't keep going on Lincoln because it's one way the other direction.
Right.
Right.
When you get to Flatbush, either you have to take a right either a left or a right turn on Flatbush because you can't go.
Yeah, and what I see people do every single day on the way to work is go left, but go left on Washington, which they are not allowed to do.
That is a conversation, and that's actually an update. That has been a conversation.
You're creating, if the road is wide enough and you see cars do it and everybody can do it, that's a design problem at the end of the day.
We spoke about this.
It's not wide enough that the bike lane goes away there. But there's no other indicators that you would not be able to do it.
Fred,
so to address that issue, to address that issue, they've been fixing that intersection. What's going to end up happening is traffic will be forced to turn off on Flatbush. So they can't keep going and do that little 45-degree turn or whatever they try and do to get onto Washington. So that's being eliminated. The irony is we went for a site visit with DOT and design and construction. And while we're there, we actually see an 18-wheeler try and make that turn off of Lincoln going on to Washington. But we've spoken with DOT. So that's actually, we're supposed to be discussing if they're not implementing already. That's something that they've been told. They need to put more traffic calming where it's no. You come off on Flatbush, you are either going southbound or northbound on Flatbush.
But what if you never had that option? What if you never had that option in the first place? What if that option was just not presented to you? And if you wanted to go on Flatbush, you'd go up to Empire.
Theoretically, it's not an option, Andrew, because when that construction is almost finished now, right? There's very little left to do.
Yes, the city bikes are a nice touch. I agree.
We brought this issue up, And part of what I've noticed that they've done is they've added another do not enter sign. There
Yep.
was only one, which was on the south side of the intersection, which is the right-hand side. On the left-hand side, now there's another. But I think they need to revisit it as well, because I haven't seen it recently, but when I first brought it up, I stood at the UPS store and just observed numerous cars going through and doing what they used to do, because that's a turn that was legal for the last 100 years. And this is something that's relatively new, although I don't believe that that's the reason why they're doing it. They're doing it because they're getting away with it. I think they can clearly see do not enter signs, and folks are just flaunting, taking a chance. So DOT needs to revisit it and make it really difficult for anyone to do that.
And that's
Yes.
part of the conversation. And I want to move on, but that was absolutely something that we noted when we did the site visit with the DOT. And I think part of the confusion is, I think even where they
Yes,
had the signs were all the way back towards Lincoln, which made you think, okay, do not enter Lincoln.
Right.
Not necessarily understanding, no, don't come as far as Washington, because you can't turn the left on Washington. So part of the conversation was they need signage to say you cannot turn, all the traffic must turn on Flatbush. You can't go up there. Now, there may be some
Yeah.
additional stuff after that, because you're probably gonna still have the people who try it. But I think it needs to be much more clear where it's like Flatbush, either you're going left or you're going right. You're not going up towards Washington. So that's the
Well,
one thing.
if
Now-
it was one way, the rest of
Well,
the street,
well,
if it's
no,
the rest of
no,
the street,
and-
we
no,
would
some of
never
that-
have to do this like months and months of back and forth.
Right. No. And some of that is going to be additional conversation, which we don't mind. And that can be something we can ask them to say, is there a history that we, or context we're not understanding in terms of that? I have some thoughts, but it's not, my thoughts aren't worth too much. It might be good for us to hear what the official rationale is with that and discuss what the options might be with looking at that. But to the point that I think a couple of the committee members have said already, it's like, yeah, there's some places we probably need to rethink in the district. Lincoln Road is definitely one of those. I think in terms of the short term, I think the loading zone is probably something that may or probably makes more sense in terms of that. Hopefully keeps people out of the middle of the street. The trucks go right on the side. The buses are doing what they need to do, and hopefully that flows. But with a further eye in terms of, it just sucks. And to the point that we were talking about with in terms of bike travel, is just ridiculous around there. To the point that the bike lanes terminate right there, and it's an ugly intersection, which is not safe. And that's a conversation that should be had as well.
Fred, I just want to say one last thing about the two-way block of Lincoln. What we have to keep in mind is that number one is a mini transportation hub, right? You have 3 or 4 bus lines and 3 subway lines. That's number one. Number two, that block of Lincoln is both used to be a feed and an exit for Prospect Park when Prospect Park had full car traffic entering at that location. Right now, it's only an exit for that location from Prospect Park, right? So the question is, if that one block of Lincoln was to be dedicated west or east, what impact would it have on that entrance/exit for the park and the surrounding community? That's what makes that one block of Lincoln completely different than all the other blocks. All of those things, not that one thing.
And you can
Jeff, the
check.
only time that
sorry.
entrance is
Check
open
the
is for people
map.
parking in the parking lot during the ice skating season. That's
Mhm.
the only time cars are allowed to go.
I also
in there.
think if you check the MTA map, all of the buses go clockwise around there. They're all in the right lane, making right turns from Flatbush onto Lincoln, and then either left or right onto Ocean. I don't think
That's true.
these are two reasons that you brought up that enforce the point. That don't
So are you
negate it. They
suggesting,
are more reason why it should be.
are you
All right,
suggesting
well,
that
listen,
the-
I'm sorry,
would
I
be
definitely
less?
wanted to make sure. Jeff, I'm sorry, but I want to make sure we move on. But I think that this is a conversation we definitely want to pick up, and I think we're better served by having DOT here. And if we give them the information that we would like for them to discuss that as part of the conversation when they get here, they can come prepared with the background on that as well. If there's something we're not seeing in terms of there's a reason why it has to be two-way, I'm not quite sure, which way, one way or the other, but definitely I think they'll be able to at least answer that question for us at that point, and we can kind of figure out what our preferences are. But thank you for that, Andrew, and that'll be something that, you know, we'll include as part of the conversation for you when they finally arrive with us. Okay, I did want to move forward then. So bus network redesign. So we've gotten the preliminary information with that. There have been a lot of there's a lot of stuff on the in terms of the plans that have been given between some of the route changes that have been proposed, that I know we've gotten some feedback from residents with regards to some of the route changes. I think also even deeper, I think that I've heard from other places. Actually, I've spoken with people who live in the Bronx as well, who went similarly through a process like that. And I think one of the details that also falls in that is, you know, part of the process usually is the elimination of bus stops as well, which is the thing we may not pay attention to, but all of a sudden becomes a surprise when all of a sudden you see the bus that you normally take on this corner. Now you got to walk 2 blocks north or 2 blocks south to get those buses. So I think that there's some more community outreach that we need to do, and MTA has acknowledged that as well. So I think one of the things they're looking at doing is actually scheduling additional outreach. So I think it's going to be really crucial for us to just make sure we also try and get community feedback. To that point, one of the things we were looking at doing, and I'm discussing with the district office, is similar to what we did with Flatbush, actually having a town hall, hosting a town hall for the bus network design, where we're able to send this out and also I think engage some of the entities in the district. I know Evansfield has already sounded an alarm in terms of they're very concerned about the 49. Plus, again, to the point, I think that there are a number of bus stop changes that may need to be addressed in terms of understanding you're trying to speed up the service, understand you're trying to get out redundancy, but at the same time, there might be some issues that the community may need to weigh in terms of why something should be there, or if there's any adjustments we need. I want to take an opportunity for us to be able to address that as well. So that's something that we're looking at the scheduling for that in terms of the calendar, but we're hoping to do that for May, prior to the hopefully prior to the committee meeting, so that way we can actually have some feedback by then and be able to discuss. I will take questions. Yes, Paco.
I would just ask, what's the purpose of us doing our own town hall on that when MTA is already doing more? I think I know they already did around, and they're doing more, and they're going to be better informed as to reasons why the changes are being proposed and all that sort of stuff. So that, like, you know, other than talking to our neighbors and stuff, there's of course that benefit, but I don't know. I wonder how effective the previous town hall we had for Flatbush Avenue really was, because there was nothing new presented. It was just another venue for locals to talk, but they were talking to us, and we know a very limited amount compared to MTA. So, and that, and to compare it to that was Flatbush Avenue, one street. We're going to be talking about so many different bus stops. People are going to have specific questions about individual bus stops or individual bus lines, or going from here into a different district, that I feel like it's kind of beyond our scope, and feels kind of perhaps just redundant.
To that point, no, I think it's a point taken. I think that usually, I think it's I think one of the criticisms of the last round was that there was definitely not the attendance that we would like to see at those rounds in terms of the informational focus. So I think that MTA understands that, and they're doing that as a second round to get that information. But I do think that there's a value where people get to come to the board, and it's not a matter of even that, when they come to a town hall, that they talk about the entire bus network redesign. They can talk about my stop on Montgomery Street is one of the things I heard is being taken off, and these are the reasons why I think we need to fight for it as a district. So it's not even a matter of they need to come and be expert on all 15 to 20 lines or whatever. I can't remember what the number is. Whatever the number of lines is, but at least if people can come and speak and champion whatever is hard. And we can hear that as a board.
Just to clarify, I didn't mean that they need to be experts. Yeah, they're going to talk about their local thing, but if we're running it, then we're the facilitators. Then we need to be experts on all of it, which we just can't be.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, I think the point is not necessarily, I don't anticipate, and this is good that we're having this conversation. I don't anticipate that we're going to spend 20 minutes to a half an hour saying, and this is what they're doing on the 41. This is what they're doing on the 43. This is what they're doing on 7. to that point, I don't think we're able to do that. But I think that if there are at least considerations, even if it's high level considerations that the residents have in terms of the 49 bus, specific stops or just general commentary with respect to that, I think that's something that's useful for us in terms of being able to bring that back at least to the high level to DOT.
Okay.
No, but I think your point is taken. I mean, I definitely, and that's the reason why I didn't want to necessarily be duplicative. And to your point, I agree. If they're doing it, I don't want to necessarily do it. The other piece of that too is we haven't noticed agencies aren't really good with sharing what they got. So I think this is an opportunity for us to hear directly from, so, a lot of people may go in there, they may hear, it's like, okay, this is what it is. Or at least even from the town hall perspective, you can get those initial reactions, but we can also inform the public in terms of these are the things to look out for when you go to these meetings, when you get the notices, and we can help you, make sure we publicize those. These are the things you're looking for. How does it change your commute in terms of your life? If they eliminate, I'm picking on 49 today, but if they eliminate the 49, that means either you're going down to the 48, or that means you've got to come all the way up to Nostrand in New York to get the 44, depending on what you're getting. And those changes can be significant to certain people in the district, depending on what they need the most. So, but at least being able to inform and educate in that respect, in terms of these are the things you look for, and those are the questions you can and should ask. And at the very least, from our perspective, we kind of understand where the pain points are. So when we're engaged, we can say, this is what we at the very least.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So yeah. So we're going to be working out loud with this one. So I'm working with the district office to kind of solidify dates. So those, that conversation will be, spread out to the committee, so that way we can kind of coordinate around those. And if members have ideas or would like to serve as coordinators or facilitators, looking at some of y'all in here, if you want to serve as facilitators, definitely would love to have you back in terms of helping with that as well. Yeah, so there will be, so that's an item we'll be coming back with, that solidifying the date. So, relatively new item that I wanted to discuss as well is that at the last board meeting, we definitely heard a lot about street closures, and especially as we're going into summer, we're going to have a lot more of that, and I think it's just been a pain point. And I think some of what's been expressed by a lot of the neighbors is some of these things just pop up, and I think even the conversations around them are terrible. There are a number of marathons that are coming. The district office did have a conversation with, I believe, New York City Roadrunners, which I think was very productive. On their part, they explained that, I think there's been a lot of turnover in terms of the leadership. So some of the heads up times or the conversations that we used to have hadn't happened in the last couple of years. And of course, you throw in the pandemic. So they are learning what they don't know. So, I definitely want to thank the district office for doing that outreach and having that conversation. And they really promised to be better neighbors with respect to that and let us know what's coming and have those conversations way earlier. Obviously, we need to do some other work as well. I think that there's some city agencies that have not necessarily been as forthcoming, letting us know when they know things. But I understand NYPD is typically usually included in those conversations, naturally. DOT, naturally. MTA, depending on what's being done, naturally. Somehow, I'm not sure if it's purposeful, or it might just be accidental, where nobody thinks, well, by the way, did we ever tell the local affected community boards that what's going on? So one of the things we're trying to do is work with the special activities permitting office and a number of these agencies as well to get better with that. And as much as possible, make sure that they come before the committee, or at least let us know what's going on, so that way we're not caught by surprise. At the board meeting, there were definitely issues that were expressed with regards to, one, the timing. Two, it's like, just how cars were towed and the way that neighbors are treated, and just, total disorganization around that. So that's one of the things that we're working on with respect to that, and trying to coordinate with a number of the agencies to make sure that these conversations are and to the extent where it's like, they understand that, listen, if you're coming to the district, you need to be respectful, and we have to make sure that people know what's going on in that respect. Are there any questions with respect to that? Okay. But absolutely, and I think what we depend on is, as committee members, if you see these things, and you guys are very plugged in, so if you see these, please let us know, so that way we can make sure we're making the right inquiries in terms of the board office, and to make sure that things are being done appropriately and that people are affected as minimally as possible if it has to happen. Okay. I believe that is all I had with respect to new business. So there's a couple of items. The letter's going to go out. Smorgasburg, we're going to make sure we have that conversation. Dante will, and if I could ask Mr. Greenberg, can you send a quick note about that along with the photos, just to make sure that Dante has that for his district service cabinet meeting?
Oh, yeah, I have a letter written. You'll get all the details.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that. Brooklyn Bus Network redesign. So we'll be feeding back out to the committee in terms of when we get closer to dates and the logistics for that as well. And absolutely leaving it with DOT in terms of making sure they need to be responsive with that. And again, I apologize to all those. That is mine. That is mine. I have to own at that point. I'm going to make sure that we come back with this and that we're able to finish up this year strong. I think we have a number of good things, good topics that we've been working on. I think we need to start making the pushes on a number of these things as well, including the bike study. That was one of the things that was definitely on the top of our list in terms of things we need to start having a conversation. I want to make sure we're not doing it onesie twosie. We need a comprehensive study to kind of figure out what makes sense in this. You know, how do we resolve those things that are just ugly and don't make sense? Okay, so with that, that's all I think we had with regards to new business. Is there anything else that we need to discuss at this time?
I imagine this would fall under new business. I believe everyone here is familiar with the Nextdoor neighborhood network, the Nextdoor platform. So there was an interesting post earlier this week where a resident in CB9 was expressing his displeasure. Actually, I don't know if it was a man or a woman, was expressing their displeasure with the placement of city bikes on Flatbush Avenue, the new biking stations. And it was quite intense, you know. But what I was able to deduce from the post was that this was a person who was completely uninformed of the fact that this was something that was about to happen. So I sent a response to the person, direct message. I didn't put it up on the post, that pretty much made him or her aware that there's an organization called the Community Board, and that if he or she was more in tune, he or she would have known what was about to happen. The reason I'm bringing it up now to this body is, what is it that the board does? What is it that this committee does to get the word out to the constituents, to the residents in CB9, that this organization exists, that this is a place where they could come to get information and possibly impact the way that things go in this neighborhood, right? Because when I wrote to him, he was like, wow, I never knew about that. I never heard about that. And I gave him, you know, the address and the phone number, you know. And I think that that's representative of a large number of people in this community. They just don't know that this is a place that they need to be aware of, that they need to participate in, get their voices heard. So to sum it up, for you, Fred, for everybody here, what does the community board do to make its presence known, to make the residents know what we do and how they can participate?
No, thank you very much for that, and I thank you for doing that outreach in terms of connecting with somebody to let them know. And I think that's part of what we depend on in terms of, as board members. This is something I advise board members, and as committee members, I absolutely, I absolutely encourage, request, beg that you serve as ambassadors for the board as well. We're a board. The board itself is 50 members. We probably have another 10 times, say, maybe about another 50 people who serve on committees as well. So we're talking about 100 people in a district of upwards of 100,000. I can never remember what the exact is. Makes it really hard. And we have a district staff, office staff with 3 people. We try and do our best in terms of getting out into certain spaces, but I mean, for a number of you, I think the reason why you're on the committee as well is because you're in certain spaces. So please, absolutely, when you get flyers, if you get the e-blasts, please share those with your networks. if there are particular places that you know that we should be in or try and make more direct contact with, let us know as well. I know sometimes the call goes out, well, listen, we need to go out and we need to be, in different places and spaces. Again, to the point where we have 3 people on staff and everyone is a volunteer and most everyone is doing 3 or 4 hats at the very least. We can try and be there as present as much as possible. If you know of places where you think we should go, let us know and we can try and, be there as well. From the district office standpoint, I think one of the things they tried to do is really push the e-blast where people are signed up. Those things will go out on a weekly basis and the notices will go out and everything of that nature. We also have a social media presence. So Facebook, we live stream our meetings. We're on Instagram as well. Do we have a TikTok yet, Mia? I don't even know.
Oh, no TikTok.
No TikTok yet, okay.
But Mia, what about Nextdoor? Wouldn't that be, especially because Nextdoor is so localized, right? If you're familiar with Nextdoor, they try and set it up by zip code. So is that one of the platforms that our announcements are going out on?
No, we actually do not use Nextdoor. As Fred stated, we do use our social media platforms. We do post our meeting information in the Patch, the Brooklyn paper. So, and our listserv is over 1,000 people. So within the subject line, we always say to share within your respective network. So we're counting on people who are informed and connected with our office to extend their hand and pass information along to those that may be in need of it. But we'll definitely, I'll speak with Dante tomorrow and take a look at Nextdoor. If you feel that'd be a great setting for us to get into in order to connect with additional constituents.
Yeah, I kind of think it is. It'd be great if there was a line item, a budget line item that either the board had or city council could make sure set aside for community boards to just put information out to everyone about their own community boards.
That has been on the wish list for years.
Yeah, it can be a bit of a tedious process because everyone that we interact with and have to subscribe to has to be a City of New York vendor. So they have to be registered in order for us to do business.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things we've been trying to do is, I think, especially as we've moved away from paper, we realize not everybody's in the electronic space yet. But it's just that it's just so much more cost effective to be able to work in that electronic space, because if you send out mailers, I mean, we just don't have the budget, just very clear. We don't have the kind of budget to have that kind of outreach where we send a mailer out every week to, we couldn't even reach half of the, the residents of the district. So to that point, we really rely on that. We can do limited flyers depending. So if you know of certain places, we can probably assist with that. But Jeff, to the point, what you just did, if you let us know there's spaces that we really probably need to look at where it's like, we can really tap into the neighborhood and the district that way, let us know. So if it's Nextdoor, or if it's, pages, or if it's websites, or if it's, community-based websites or things of that nature, if you let us know, Dante and Mia and Khaled are very good about looking into those things to see if we can tap in as well. There was a piece of your question that I think you had asked to, I'm not sure if I addressed. The one thing I'll share that I tell the board as well, and I think one of the things I'm really happy with this group is you guys are, this committee is very plugged in and you see a lot. One of the things that, as a board office, we don't know what we don't know. So when you see issues, I always ask, please, one, do the first thing and let 311 know and register the complaint with 311. And then the next piece is if you let the district office know. So if you let Mia or Dante know, then they can follow it and chase it on that level. It does two things. One, hopefully, they're very good. So it's like they might be able to, between Dante and me, they can contact agencies directly and try and get a faster resolution. So it's not sitting there, or they can follow to see where it stands. But then the other piece of it as well is the city is very good focused. So they want to see how many traffic accidents. They want to see how many broken lights. They want to see how many, noise complaints. That's how they quantify those things. And when we have that data, then we're able to actually say, okay, no, listen, we've had a number of these complaints, a number of these issues, and the numbers are not lying about this. As opposed to, if we do things outside of the system, we don't always reflect the work that needs to get done or what the real issues are. So absolutely call 311, call the board office and follow up, and then we're able to actually follow it and get, get better in terms of making sure we're following the data in terms of what the issues and challenges are. Okay. All right. Paco, I'm sorry, I saw your hands up.
Yeah, no worries. I had two things to raise. One, as follow-up to the on-site visit that we did at Lincoln Road, at the intersection that Andrew was mentioning before about the illegal left turn onto Washington. I know they had said they'd be done at the end of March. Clearly, they're not done, but they're nearly done. And the City Bike Station has been installed now. So clearly no cars are parked directly on top of that. So that is a physical deterrent, which is good. But a few days this week, I've been over there this morning as well. I noticed there are 3 do not enter signs now, which is signage is useful, but there is still at least 1 car that is parked on the new concrete. That, I don't know how long we need to wait, but I know we had spoken to Diana in person and she was like, give it some time and we'll see. Maybe they could get granite boulders or some physical deterrents. I would say now is the time already.
Listen, now wait. If you see them doing that already,
yeah. So, like, when I think Stanley had asked
about, yeah.
Well, no, Stanley had asked, like, oh, could we have a green street there with like gardening, and they were like, oh, it's too heavy, or because there's so much utilities underground that it can't hold the weight of a garden, and like it definitely can't hold the weight of cars that are on there nonstop. Plus, it's brand new concrete that the car is just going to destroy it. I think we should tell them it's already ineffective. We should have some of the granite blocks put in to complement the City Bike Station.
Well, if it can't support a garden or a car, can it support a granite block? I mean, maybe we need some other kind of bollard there.
A fake granite block? I don't know, something.
Yeah.
A hollow. It'll be hollow.
Yeah.
A styrofoam granite block.
Yeah. There was a challenge. I'm not sure if it was a matter of about the heaviness of it. I think it was a matter of, I think we were talking about it
Stuff
dug into the
underneath.
ground. And it was saying that there's electrical stuff and things of that nature underground. So like the water and stuff like that.
Well, planters would be
work.
fine.
Yeah.
Planters might be fine. And, I mean, we can figure out, we can, it's probably helpful for us to re-engage and say, okay, well, listen, understanding you're not totally done, because I still see some holes in the side, but where do we stand right now? And is it, can we start this conversation? So no, absolutely, we can bring that up.
And then the other thing I wanted to raise, similar with expanded pedestrian spaces, the projects that had been going for funded, 10 more years ago, but the plazas put in where they closed the slip lane on Franklin and the one on Remsen, the edges of our district along Empire Boulevard. I pass both of them pretty much every day, and I've noticed that the bulk of construction is done, if not entirely. But I was looking at the old presentation; they promised a lot more trees than are actually there, and they put benches in the proposed diagrams that they showed us. There are more tree pits, but some are empty and some are full. Either way, there's no benches or seating or anything there. So they've paved a lot of area and they've reconfigured the streets, which, it takes time to figure out what if it's meeting the safety threshold that they wanted to. But either way, the usability of it, I feel like the beauty should be enhanced with more trees and the sustainability of it, but the seating and all those other I feel like there are little details that got overlooked. And if no one's bugging DDC about it, then I wonder if they just forgot entirely and they're not going to come back. So
we do need to talk to, because I think, there was definitely a lot of conversation with respect to those intersections. I think part of the promise was green space. I see a lot of concrete for it, but I don't see the green, to your point. A couple of tree pits here and there. Okay, that's nice, but that wasn't the green space we were looking at necessarily.
Right.
So I think, they should probably come back and give us a report. Is there a change in the plan, and what can they do to improve the functionality of that as a green space? Because that was the entire premise to begin with, why we were forced to give up this.
Yeah, and then in tandem with it, the one on the eastern end at Remsen, I'm there about 8:40 in the morning every day, dropping off my daughter at school 2 blocks further east. I think because of the bus only lane and cars respecting it actually creates a backup in the short block between Empire and East New York Avenue. And so the crosswalk is blocked every single time. It's pretty dangerous. So I don't know. Like they did the presentations. I think it was justified to do a redesign. Takes a lot of getting used to. Some pluses, some minuses, but I don't know if they've done a new analysis of it. And maybe there are still other changes to do. Sometimes they do things right, sometimes they do it wrong. But either way, we need to always reevaluate. So I wonder if we can push them to at least reevaluate traffic flow there and perhaps make further tweaks.
No, we should. So hold on, I don't go to the Remsen end that often. Is it completed over there, or?
I mean, the same as at Lincoln, like the concrete's been done for ages. It looks like someone is coming into that old Walgreens, Dwayne Reed space, or some contractors there doing some work. So I think someone's going to put a new retail space in there. But like the actual physical construction has been done for months. I think certainly all of 2023. I think even in 2022 that stuff was done. That's why I feel like they've just forgotten that they were supposed to also put a few more trees in the tree pits, some benches, all of that sort of stuff. But it seems like all the work is done. The traffic has been flowing the way it has been proposed to flow now for many, many months. And I don't know if they've been collecting the data to say like, look, this is exactly what we wanted, or, oh crap, this is not what we wanted, or we had an unintended consequence and now we're blocking the crosswalks for all pedestrians and stuff. So I just think it's been forgotten about. And, I would say it's on us to remind them, don't forget about it.
No, we're past due. I mean, they should be giving us an update on that whole project. I think we get the notices, but I think they should be able to talk about they should be close to the end of this. What else is left? And to your point, I mean, I think that the idea there's promised to be green spaces. What's going on with the greenery? What is the plan for that? And also at this time, bring up, I think it's appropriate to bring up. And by the way, it's like, listen, if it was an unintended consequence, or if you need to do some other traffic calming, this is what's happening in terms of the crosswalks and getting blocked up. Okay, no, I'll make a note of that. So that'd be one of the things that we. Mia, is that DDC? Who's in charge of that? Right? Is it still under DDC or is it DOT yet?
It's DDC.
Okay, so that's a conversation with DDC. Okay, no, but thank you. Okay, so I see Mr. Granum and Mr. Green. Yeah, okay, hold on. Mr. Magnus, Mr. Granum, Mr. Greenberg. Go in that order. Mr. Magnus, what you got?
Sorry, total non sequitur. I was thinking about representation from DOT, MTA, etc. I recall earlier this month, the borough president's office came to the ULURP meeting to talk about the comprehensive Brooklyn plan. I know, Mia, you were there and organized it. But I remember thinking in that meeting, there was a lot of the conversation that was probably more apt for transportation because a lot of it involved streetscapes and what they're trying to do in terms of health, sidewalk cleanliness, curb usage, etc. I'm curious if you've reached out or if anyone in the office has reached out to get a representative to speak about the implications in our district. I think who was our point person? John Douglas from the
John
borough
Douglas,
office?
the director of land use, yes.
Yeah. Is there any opportunity, like, he seems pretty responsive to coming to community boards. So maybe he could help fill in some of the gaps about the long-term visioning of this part of Brooklyn if DOT is not willing to.
It's a mixed bag. I mean, I think when we asked John's pretty, to your point, he's pretty responsive. There's a certain extent where I think the borough president's plan touches it, but I'm not sure how far into it goes. I think it's more in terms of an overarching plan in terms of they want to make that as one of the bullet points in terms of the vision of the improving of streetscapes and curb usage. I'm not sure how much more he's going to be able to get into specifics, especially as with regards to the district. Let me think about that one. But just as importantly as well, DOT doesn't get off the hook on that one. That's their job. That's what they get paid. Everybody gets paid over there 2 weeks, every other
Yeah,
week.
I just yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, they don't get away with that. That's something, and it's a charter mandate. They're supposed to come when we ask them to come. So I would just ask if you have something very, very specific on the transportation end, definitely we can talk about that, and we can see if it's something we can get on the agenda. They can get them to talk about it. But I definitely think that DOT is probably more appropriate to come and address all these issues because that is their purview.
Fair. I
Mr.
will.
Brown.
I can email Mia with any. Sorry, I'll email Mia with any like particular questions that I have. I mean, it's just right now. I think it's just a bunch of maps and data gathering. But I think the office has a health focus, and we talk a lot about street safety. So I think those two things do go together pretty nicely.
No, one second. Yeah, and absolutely, please send that in to me, and we can look at that as well to see what how that fits, how it best fits. Mr. Graham.
Yeah, I don't know if it was stated, but when we were speaking about the green space, cement space, whatever we want to call it, where they closed off Franklin in particular, who's responsible for maintaining that? When it's finally finished, there's supposed to be benches out there and it's just a wide open area. Do we know, was that information ever shared with us?
Good question.
Because some of them that have been established, they actually have tables. There's one that I'm around fairly regularly over in Clinton Hill where they closed Putnam Avenue. And it's like a little plaza. So there are chairs and tables that are brought out, but there are more stores there. Since there's really just this parking lot for Western Beef, I don't know what the end use is going to be, if there's going to be chairs and tables, and if so, who cleans up, because that could turn into a problem.
Yeah, that's a good question. Here's the thing. I think that usually the conversation hinges on whether it's the city bills. If the city builds it as a public space, I think the city is taking on the ownership of, no, we're going to maintain that. If it's a request to turn a public space into some kind of usage like that, I think, and Paco and Stanley, I think, this is the conversation we had with the space on Flatbush. If we say, by the way, you got this patch of sidewalk here, we want to turn it into a public space. The conversation becomes, if you want it to become a public plaza, there's a whole process for that where you have to find a community partner who's going to maintain that. So I think if we said, okay, well, listen, we want to set up tables and everything else, well, you have to find a community partner because they're the ones who handle the cleanup. So they make sure the tables are maintained, they make sure somebody comes and sweeps every once in a while, and they make sure, they do all that stuff. So that would be an entity we'd have to identify that does that. But to the point of those green spaces, to be blunt, we didn't ask for them. DOT said they're going to give it to us, and they gave us something we didn't ask for. So they need to come up with the money to figure out, once you build it, great, you need to maintain it as well. Because, to me, it seems, it doesn't seem like all of a sudden now we've got to go scramble to try and find a community partner for that. That should have been contemplated as part of the plan before you broke it all up and everything.
Wow, so we've never been given an answer, or no information has ever been provided as to who's going to do this, who's going to be responsible for it.
Not particularly. I mean, the city is the high answer I have. Who specifically, I'm not sure. But to the point, I think that was raised before. I think that was something the city was supposed to have. We saw the pictures where it was supposed to be green space. The city was going to put the green space. They said, no, it's going to be green space for the park. I'm not sure if it's something that Parks comes across the street and they come from Prospect Park to take care of that.
I vaguely remember them saying Parks because it was, it's still the same size triangle of green or that was labeled the Green Street. I think it's named after somebody too, even though there's no plaque, but it was deemed a green street, which always falls under Parks Department. It's just Parks Department has no budget. They've been decimated. So I think I vaguely recall, this was so many years ago now that we saw the first presentations, even the last presentations, but I vaguely recall them saying it would continue to be under Parks Department and not on the community board or anything else. But I think it's a great question that we should get an update. Jeff,
and they should address it.
Perfect.
And especially since we didn't get the green, we need to figure out what is the plan at this point. Okay, well, thank you for that. Stanley.
On that point about the green, it's possible, I mean, maybe they're just waiting for now because now is planting season. You wouldn't plant a tree in the middle of the winter. So maybe they're just late. I want that to be the answer, but I'm certainly not hopeful. So I would say if we're going to ask them, we could say, are you planning to plant the trees and the greenery this season? Or, and then they'll realize either they forgot or they ran out of money, or then we'll get an answer. But at least let's kind of couch it like, oh, we're waiting for this. Are you just waiting for the right season?
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that too. I would say this, just from some of the conversations I've had with our liaison for DOT. Some of those things end up just being a matter of supply chain.
Yeah.
Like if we want bike racks, they're like, well, we don't have these in stock right now. We're waiting for those to come back. To your point, if it's trees, depending on, if there's a season they have to get planted, so maybe that might affect that as well. And just other, other material aspects that, it might just depend on when they get it, they'll put it in, but if they don't have it yet,
Yeah.
they can't actually finish the project.
Right.
I would almost anticipate that's part of the reason why they haven't finished some of this stuff, because they are behind schedule by about a month right now.
Right.
But they should be able to speak to that and at least give us those answers and give us an update in terms of what are we really looking at. Okay. All right. Okay. So is there anything else for us to consider this evening? Okay. All right. So listen, to all the members, I want to thank you for coming this evening. For the members of the community who've come out as well, or who've watched us online, I thank you for coming and speaking and watching the meeting this evening. If any questions come up, please feel free to contact the district office. And again, I reiterate, if you see any issues in the district, please contact 311 to make sure that the issue is registered. And then also please make the additional step of contacting the community board office and letting them know as well. Make sure you have that reference number so we can follow up, and we can also see where the trends are, if it's just a one-off problem or these are issues, larger issues that we need to make sure we're addressing with the city. But I thank everyone again. And for the committee members, we're going to be working out loud, so you'll be getting a number of emails in terms of follow-ups stemming from some of the items we discussed this evening. So at this time, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Moved by Stanley Greenberg, seconded by Pacwa.
Police. Okay, cool.
And Police thirds it. All right. Any objection? Any objection to us adjourning?
No.
Hearing none,
No.
we stand adjourned. Time is now 8:18 p.m. Thank you, everyone, and have a good evening.
Good night, everyone.
Night.
Take
Good
care.
night.
Good night, Mayor.